The Fantastic Four is Marvel, and Marvel is the Fantastic Four. And I think people have lost sight of that in these last 15 years with the MCU, starting with Iron Man and the films that we've made. It all goes back to these four amazing characters that really launched what everybody knows and loves as Marvel Comics.
It's good banter, but it just needs to somehow end.
The Fantastic Four literally saved Marvel Comics. 1961, Marvel Comics was on the verge of bankruptcy. And as a Hail Mary, a last-ditch effort, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee decided to come up with a new concept.
And they thought it was their last chance to do something different, to do something unique, and to do something that they wanted to do, which was make relatable heroes.
The hero, he was a fellow like me. He talks too much. He was always boring the others because one of the other guys was always saying, "Will you shut up?"
The 60s and the 50s was also a period of time where a lot of the superheroes were godlike. And all of a sudden, as Stan Lee famously put it, he made these characters with feet of clay. They were fallible, they made mistakes. They're not gods, they are people. And I do think that's what lit the fire and what continues to light the fire on the Fantastic Four to this day.
Putting the voice in with it as well. Is there anything that springs to mind for that?
Roll camera.
The hard work of a film starts long, long, long before the camera rolls. And casting has been the secret to Marvel Studios' success.
Do anything about this.
Arms down. We're going to look one way, we're going to look the other way. Up.
Casting has been the thing that we've poured over and spent so much time dealing with, because that is where you know it's going to work or it's not going to work. And we always talk about going back to Robert Downey Jr. as the very first decision that we ever made as our own independent studio.
Oh.
I was like, you did that from...
With the Fantastic Four, again, it is going to be entirely about the chemistry between those four people. When this cast came together, Matt and Grant and the whole team and I looked at each other and went, oh, this is going to work.
It was definitely something we spent a lot of time thinking about. And Reed Richards is a complicated character.
What you're listening to is a transmission from an alien species.
He's a scientist, you know, he's in his laboratory, but he loves his family so deeply and would do anything for them. And the trick is just that he doesn't often know how to express it, right?
I built this instead. Anyone can build a crib, only I can build this.
Anyone can build a crib, but not for us, not for him.
And so for us, it was about trying to capture all of those elements. What I love about Pedro is that he communicates great intelligence. He is a person of action, but he's also a person of deep thought. But his emotional capacity as an actor is incredible.
I am going to solve this. I'm going to make it right.
Reed Richards has stretching powers. I loved the kind of metaphor for sort of stretching himself and overextending himself to fight and to protect.
I've detected her energy signature where the planet used to be.
So are you saying that if this Herald is still with Galactus?
Yeah. Then they can do what she says they can do.
Stepping into it, I know that Evan, Vanessa, and Joe are three of the best talents that are working today. Who knows if we were going to get along? I knew we were going to get along. I'd already done a movie with Joseph Quinn. I can't get rid of him. Evan and I come from similar kind of trenches off-Broadway and off-Broadway theater. And Vanessa, she's so luminescent and fierce.
It's about fighting for something bigger than yourself.
It's about connecting to something bigger than yourself.
Vanessa Kirby is an amazing actress. She's a person of great range as a performer.
I got you, little guy.
Exactly. Like, totally what needs to happen. Yeah.
She has also that emotional accessibility that Pedro has, and she was really in love with the character and was going deep into her research about who Sue was and could be, and that was just very inspiring to me as well.
You don't even know what that means.
Go. I found her to be so singular and unique and interesting and complex, and she becomes the leader of the Future Foundation, which is a huge global organization that they create to create a kind of global unity, which I think our world desperately needs. So I found her very inspiring as a leader, and it was very cool that she was allowed to be a leader in this version as she has been in the comics.
She really is the natural leader, and in some ways the most powerful member of the group. I mean, her power set is pretty unbelievable. It started with just invisibility, and then it turned into force fields, and then offensive weapons. She's not to be messed with. And yet at the same time, she's holding all these guys together.
Rosetta Stone to help him find his Archimedes lever.
Johnny Storm, he is Sue's brother, but
I saw me and her and stars, and she spoke to me.
he's a bit of a rock star, and Joe Quinn's a phenomenal actor. He's so alive, he brings so much to what he does, and I knew that within Joe, there was a cocky bravado, a great sense of humor, but there was also a vulnerability.
He's a bit of a show-off with his powers. Sometimes he can use them for less savory means. He can, just be a little bit attention-seeking.
Just take me.
Go!
He is a little bit of a lost soul in regards to the fact that he's looking for love, as many of us are. He's finding it in sometimes the wrong places, and he's trying to find his way through making sense of this kind of extraordinary situation that he finds himself in with the rest of his family.
What are you doing?
What do you mean, what am I doing?
You're gonna ruin your appetite.
I'm hungry.
Ben Grimm, The Thing, has an unbelievable performance from Evan Ross-Bachrach in the heart of it, which makes him feel like a real soulful person, which he is.
The last occasion led to the accident that mutated them and gave them those
Evan has incredible vulnerability, but also strength. He seems so tough on the outside, but is so soft on the inside, and that's Ben.
It's got to be playful. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't work. For me, it's a very interesting character in that he's incredibly powerful, incredibly strong, but quite tender, a bit ashamed, a romantic man, and then all of a sudden forced into this kind of like monstrous sort of form. So yeah, complicated character. I think probably at the time he was written, whatever, in 1961, probably the most complicated character in Marvel.
Eben played him with so much soul and gentleness when he's so big, and I loved watching him transform, how he's so become the physicality of Ben and how he moves. He's just so in his body now, and I saw him grow with that.
It's been a good experience. I think it's great to work with all the other actors.
We were a force, When we were locked into one another, that was it.
It's really special to be part of something that has like so much soul. It's so rare to have like a family. It's like about a brother and a sister, and a husband and a wife, and his best friend from university. And we're in this thing together.
Chosen family.
Chosen family, yeah, and it felt like that in filming.
Ladies and gentlemen, just when you thought we couldn't love, admire, or appreciate them any more than we do, and they're now 25% more fantastic. Reed, Sue, Johnny, Ben, and Franklin, the Fantastic Five.
The Fantastic Four were created in the 60s during the space race. It was JFK, it was the time of optimism, of looking to the stars. And it's so baked into the DNA of the comic book that it just felt like, why not set it in that time? But also we were putting it in our own version of the 60s, in this retro future world.
We are doing something very unique and really embracing the spirit of the comics in a very direct way. And we needed artists and storytellers and filmmakers to help us do that. And we have Kazra, the production designer of Loki Season 1 and Season 2, doing the Fantastic Four and bringing this retro futuristic look to an entire New York City and an entire world.
We're setting the story in an era and in a location that's at once completely familiar and relatable, and yet is completely innovative and new.
We wanted to add that layer of what if Reed Richards existed? He's Steve Jobs meets Einstein, you know, so the idea that he would have changed the technology in this city felt really exciting to us.
So if you think he was born in 1930, he probably wasn't affecting the world too much until he was around 20 years old. So basically everything that was designed and built prior to 1950 might look exactly the same as our world. But the things that came after that point would start to telegraph his influence. All of a sudden, there's a flying robot or a monorail with turbine engines on it and a flying car.
Matt very much challenged us at the early stages to try and do as much as we could practically. And we have built Times Square.
It is the place in the movie where we can most clearly demonstrate what our retrofuturistic mid-century New York looks like, where you have classic buildings like Horn and Hardart and Leighton's and Whelan's, which were like real places in Times Square in the era. And then you contrast that with a lot of retrofuturistic elements that were not there, like Dom's Diner, which is the shape of a giant UFO.
Times Square was quite daunting in terms of set decoration. How far do you go? How much detail do you put in? One never knows if they're going to put cameras inside shops. So we really allowed the dressing to be as though there might be a camera inside looking out. And so we really dressed it all for real as far as we could.
There was just so much care that was put into what the movie looks like. And I think that that aesthetic really informed a rich way of realizing these characters.
It was such an imaginative space. It wasn't something that anyone had ever seen. So it was a magical experience. And those night shoots were amazing. We were so blown away.
Great.
Yancey Street is counterpoint to Times Square. It is the more kind of classic New York, largely built before Reed Richards' influence, where ordinary people live, and there's a kind of a neighborhood quality to Yancey Street.
How's Sue doing? No, she's getting close. She was craving some Maisie's cookies.
Yancey Street for us was about community, about embracing different cultures. So we had, you know, the Jewish bakery, and we had the synagogue, the Italian barbers, and we had the Puerto Rican deli, you know, the trendy record store. We really tried to make Yancey Street very much part of the normal world, not the futuristic world. So when Ben comes back to it, he feels he's come home.
You know, it feels really good being back here. I like that everything stays the same.
Baxter Building is on the east side of Manhattan, and Matt had an idea early on that the launch pad of the Excelsior would be built over the East River.
It was important for the space launch to feel adventurous and for it to feel ambitious, and it was transcendent.
They've got a beautiful, amazing sort of retro future rocket launcher. So when launches are happening, it feels like Cape Canaveral, and people are gathering on the opposite bank to watch this amazing moment as they jet off into space.
The Baxter Building is a very unique building in that it's the home to the Future Foundation. So there's a kind of an assembly hall within the base of the building. That's what we're shooting in Spain. And then we imagine that there are many floors of administration. And then above that, I think there's a series of laboratories full of scientists that are working under the direction of Reed Richards. And above that is his own laboratory. The lab is super organized into 3 distinct workstations. There's the red workstation, which is where prototypes are made, anything hands-on and analog. And the yellow area is an area for contemplation and discussion. And then finally, there's the blue area, which is the sort of mission control area.
Most of it is being handmade by our model-making department. It was a real feat, and it actually went to the wire that we're still working on at 11 o'clock at night, you know, shooting in the morning. But once it was done, we were all very proud of it.
That all helps with the suspension of disbelief, which is critical when you're creating a fantasy world.
worked.
Welcome to the Baxter Building.
The apartment was very challenging for our model making department. We had to do a huge floating fireplace, which had to be taken in and out. We also had a sunken seating area, which everybody enjoyed.
You know what? The sunken living room was really cool.
I think there's going to be a massive resurgence in sunken living rooms. I want one.
And then we designed and built the kitchen of the future. We had a revolving fridge and we had all the American products of the time loaded in. And that was one of the sets I was really pleased with.
Wash your hands first, please.
I was on my gloves
Just
the whole
wash your.
time.
Let me try that. Okay. Okay. Is this guy good? That is fantastic.
Having a practical Herbie just felt like having another actor on set. Alistair, our head of special effects, did an amazing job building multiple Herbie robots that were run by a team of effects artists and puppeteers.
I was very excited about Herbie. The reality of how big of a character he was going to be just grew and grew. Design and build was probably around 22 weeks. It was a bit of a tight time frame, but he pretty much does everything that we'll see him do on screen. And our team have really learned how to interact with the different cast members.
Oh, thank you, Herbie.
There's just something about Herbie, I kind of fell for him pretty quickly, and he's so cute. I just kept trying to touch him on the head a bunch, and I don't know, I felt like we had a shorthand. I felt like Herbie and Ben maybe spent a lot of time together. They were homies in a way. Is this guy good?
And then we brought in Jack, who's our puppeteer, and that was really, really helpful. And Jack's an actor himself, and so he was finding ways to create humor and connection. He brought so much to what Herbie was doing.
It's about finding the balance between that robotic, logical nature, but also kind of flavoring it with human emotion.
Herbie, record.
It's fun to play those moments on set, those little moments of connection.
My laboratory felt like it was as long as a football field. I'm just going back and forth, and poor Herbie's following me around and reacting and basically in dialogue with me in all these scenes. And I thought it would be really boring and tedious, and instead I had a great scene partner. Jack was so tuned in and reacting to everything that you were doing and doing little whistles and stuff like that.
New deep space transmission.
I'm very indebted to him.
Good job, Herbie.
With Matt Shakman's approach, he's always done it through the lens of what was available to filmmakers in the 60s. What were the techniques they used back then?
We spend a lot of time when you're working on something that has a lot of VFX, looking at shots and saying, gosh, what will make this feel more realistic? Which, of course, when you film something for real, you never have those questions because it's real. So why not shoot a miniature rocket?
The miniature of the Excelsior spaceship behind us is 1/30th scale, and it's about 13.5 feet long, about 6 feet tall. It took us about 14 weeks to build. It's made of fiberglass and aluminum and lots of 3D printed parts. So it's got quite a few details with panel lines, rivets, vents, engines, things like that, to give it a sense of scale and to hold up to that close-up photography.
It feels very much of the time, but also retro future as well. So it encapsulates perfectly the kind of stylistic world that we were trying to create.
The idea is that all of this stuff, from the Baxter apartment to the Baxter building itself, to the lab, to the Fantastic Car, to the Excelsior, have all been designed by Reed Richards. And so the Excelsior and the Fantastic Car were two things that we sort of designed in tandem. You can look at the form language of the two, and they're very related.
With the Fantastic Car, we were looking at trying to treat it like a real car that could transform and fly and do all kinds of amazing things as well, but also is literally a car. And I started to look at a lot of concept cars from that era. There were concept artists working back then to try and create what their idea of the future was. And that's what the world we're trying to build is.
That took a lot of designing to get something that looks different, that can drive and fly. And we used Alistair and special effects and his department to build the cars.
It's a really interesting design. It's effectively a convertible car. Most convertible cars, because they have no structure in the roof, they have transmission tunnels and things like that that give them strength in the floor. But our department were quite keen to have a flat floor because there's 4 people and an interesting seating arrangement. So that meant there was no strength in the floor and no functional roof. The other really complicated part of the car is that the canopy and the doors open as sort of a 4-item. You've got front canopy, rear canopy, and the 2 doors. And they all have to open in a sequence because they overlap and interlink. So there's a small motion control computer in there. Once we've settled on the design that can work, then we start to build it. The hero car itself has an interior. There were just so many moving parts and minute details. My team have built cars before, but just nothing quite so gorgeous.
So sexy, it's great.
And we decided to put an electric drive unit in there. So that's got roughly a 200 horsepower front wheel drive. But then it became apparent that the third act needed much more action from that car. So we very quickly started to build a second one. And the needs for the second one just grew and grew and grew. So we used a 500 horsepower rear wheel drive electric system for that. It's basically a performance sports car.
That was a tremendous amount of fun, and then we put it up on a big gimbal, and when they're flying through the air, you know, it was able to move in the way that we needed it to. For a long time, we were debating about flying cars in general, but for the most part, the skies belong to the Fantastic Four.
Being around virtuosity in this business is thrilling. What they've done with this world is beautiful.
Matt had a very, very specific visual vision that existed on a big macro level in terms of the world, and then also on a tiny, minuscule level, and just little details. I mean, that takes a certain kind of mind to be able to hold the breadth of that vision, and that was incredibly valuable and impressive.
It was just so fun to step into an era that felt so familiar and yet so otherworldly.
It felt like a real opportunity to try and establish an essence of these characters.
This is a film about humanity and humanity dreaming of what's ahead, right? We're imagining a future beyond geopolitics. I mean, this is what science fiction does best, which is to dream of a better future.
Johnny, your girlfriend's back.
Oh, we'll fix that.
Are you the protectors of this world?
Yes, we are.
Your planet is now marked for death.
The Fantastic Four comics, based in the 60s, was a period that we decided to stage this film in. So going back to those early comics, you see which enemies and which bad guys you're going to pick and put them against.
Galactus is huge, you know, and one of the things we wanted to make sure that we captured was that scale. And it's very hard.
I will have the child, and I will spare your world.
We approached it practically, and we have a wonderful performance at the heart of it from Ralph Ineson.
Ralph is such exceptional casting.
Got it. I think you're right. Good.
You speak to him conversationally, and he is the nicest, most welcoming man, and still his voice just kind of reverberates. Everything sort of just kind of starts to coalesce.
You carry life inside you. I'm hoping that Galactus's voice sounds like he's millions of years old and he hasn't spoken for millions of years. It's all about that size and trying to get your head around that as much as you possibly can. I will have the child. So for me, it started with breath and making sort of more yogic breath so you can hear it and feel it, and trying to imagine what that would do on a huge scale. So I watched lots of tsunami videos and tornadoes and wild nature's disasters. And just to think that that's the power of his size and his lungs and what that could do, and just try and concentrate on things bigger than human scale. He will one day carry a power that eclipses my own. Enough to destroy all there is, or ever was. And then, obviously, everything gets built around you, the suit and everything like that, which then starts to inform it. The costume is absolutely amazing. There's no two ways about it. It's the most stunning looking thing.
Galactus was a massive challenge for us, not just in his size, but in the complexity of the costume. The biggest challenge was to make something on a human scale that we know is going to be blown up into an absolutely gigantic character. So every little bit of detail on him has to be minute and tiny so that when he is blown up to that huge scale, it all feels very real. He's so big and he's so detailed that when you look at him, you could almost believe that he, in himself, was a spaceship. We really embraced that, and we made what was one of the biggest costumes we've ever made. And it was pretty successful, I think. Our lovely actor, Ralph Ineson, he had no complaints. He said it was pretty comfy, which was a shock to all of us.
The one without this mask to start.
It was as comfortable as it could possibly be. It's very heavy, but it was very wearable, and I could do my job perfectly well.
So this is where the sausage is made.
With Harvey Elder, aka the Mole Man, I didn't know how they were going to approach the character. And in actuality, the character is a lot more humanized and grounded. It was less about getting to be showy, and it was more about trying to be real.
Butter me up.
It's like, how do you ground this in reality and sort of remind people of a disgruntled educational figure growing up, or like your grouchy next door neighbor? What a grand gesture. Thanks for the big.
From a costume point of view, it was great fun to work with Paul Waterhauser, who, you know, inhabits the character and really embraced the kind of idea that we were going to use real clothes and it would all be real but heightened. And we're really happy with how he turned out, actually. He looks like the Mole Man from the comic books, but he could be a real person.
Form a line there, a line here. Good evening. Good to see you. Hello. Welcome. This is a safe place. The costume was everything I could have dreamed of, as far as the gloves and the sort of like makeshift low-income cape that he wears, and everything just feels like it's been lived in for a long time. And I think, you know, the smell of it, the feel of it, the look of it really helped me with the character, I think.
Felt like maybe it was a little bit like an in-between.
Say no more.
Okay.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's almost like I'm wearing a superhero costume, but it's someone who isn't a superhero but wants to feel like one. So in a way, that plays to Mole Man's insecurities, and it really kind of helped me with the performance in a way.
The mine was a challenge. We went to a real mine up north in Derbyshire. Standing in the mine and seeing what the crew did in terms of dressing it, watching what people accomplished and what it gave us creatively on the screen, which I don't believe looks like a set. I felt that was quite amazing.
He turned you into this. Shallabal.
In our film, Shallabal is a Silver Surfer. Just like everybody in our cast, I was just basically looking for Swiss Army knives. You know, I was looking for people who could who had every tool, that they could do everything.
Give up the child. Surely he would do the same.
I've been a big fan of Julia Garner. You know, she's an incredible actor. There's a boldness and a theatricality to her when she chooses to turn it on, and a quiet restraint when she chooses to go that way. She's also fearless.
I herald Galactus.
I put her on a 40-foot-tall lift in front of 400 extras in Times Square. She just jumped in and just took over.
That was not only the Silver Surfer's first day of meeting the Fantastic Four, but that was also my first day, which is actually very cool that that got to be my first day. Luckily, it worked out.
Before.
Yeah. It's my first time in mocap. It's like a little weird, but it's kind of nice not having to like be in the same costume every day. You don't have to do like hair or makeup, which is really nice, but it's a different type of acting.
Use this time to rejoice and celebrate, for your time is short.
Everything gets picked up, so it's almost like theater in that sense, in a way. So you always have to be on, because even if you're off camera, you're never really off camera because you have a camera right here. It always keeps you on your toes.
I saw Julia play this depth of emotion about essentially having made a sacrifice, ultimately, for her family. You know, she's a slave. She's given her life up in order to protect the people that she loves. And so that was a very interesting I thought it was essential for the story because you have this family that feel the same, and then suddenly you have this other person who's having the same experience and yet seems like a threat to us.
Designing a surfer is essentially designing three things. You're designing the form of the body and the face. You're designing the surface quality, meaning how reflective is it, and then you're also designing what it's reflecting. In order to do those designs, it's actually been hugely challenging and time-consuming.
I think that helps justify.
Matt had really strong ideas about the surfer. He really wanted it to look like old, tarnished mirrors, but just to create interesting patterns, because the character is also supposed to be ancient, and trying to make a character feel that old without feeling, diseased or broken. The tarnish has gone a long way to doing that. It's been an interesting and cool process.
That's some stuff that we looked at together. We'll do some of this a separate. Cool. Should we try just running through one and we'll start to dial in this lighting?
Absolutely. You have failed, as do all who fight.
It's a huge opportunity to bring characters to life that I've loved on the page, that have been a part of my life for so long as a fan, It's nice to imagine a world that's optimistic, where people can come together. And oftentimes, it's really nice to see when the world is threatened, Earth comes together, the world comes together to work towards a common goal, and it's nice to put a film out there that offers a different approach.
Oh, well, damn.
Oh! Do not shut me down! Should I go faster? Do not shut me down!
A bit too much.
I'm just doing this to get dizzy.
Shut up. You're right. You're right.
Right. How do you say, oh, f***ing Marvel Land?
Oh, damn baboon! Oh, Reed Richards. Fantastic.
For the DVD.
Johnny, do we have to? Johnny, do we have to? Johnny, do we have to?
One more. Sorry.
This is going well.
Every time. Oh my God.
What about this big glob of... Did you get that? Turn off every light switch on the planet.
Okay. Bless you.
Cold? I'm just
allergies.
Allergic to dishonest moments.
I will fly the scar. Tell Franklin, jump.
Can we go back to the beginning? I detected her energy. Sorry, come. I'm sorry, camera. You ready to move with me? I have nothing. I have no talent. In that tape, we must do that one again. I nailed it, bro. What you're listening to is a transmission from an alien species. What? I'm sorry. Good. Very good.
Really nice. Good. Let's do another.
Feels a bit constipated.
Quite complicated.
Constipated.
She just farted a little bit.
A little bit.
It's loud. It's a loud fart. It's a loud fart.
If you'd like to tell me now, it would be very helpful, especially if you're a space god. I know, it's a boring speech. I didn't write it.
Ah! Jesus Christ.
Toodles.
Scott?